you can be taken to a completely different place. It's a gift if you can do that, if you can write that kind of music. I mean, that's time travel.
If I look back now, it's weird because it was just what I did at the time, because that's the choices I was making, that's what I was doing, that's the music I was writing. I'm not proud of it as such, because I can't relate to it apart from I remember doing it. Well, the bits I do remember anyway. It was just a kind of thing you did at the time, you know. If I get a commission to do the music for an arcade game that already existed, music had already been written by the Japanese company that made the game, you know, Street Fighter 2, Formula 1, F-15, there was lots of them. For some reason I never really knew, they would never send a copy of the music on cassette or disc or anything. I just had to find out how the music went. The only way to do that was to go down to the arcade and listen to it being played on a machine. I'm not really good at playing those games, and so you'd watch the kids in there who were really good at them and you'd get them to play the game, but give them the money so can you play it again. I need to hear it again, and they'd play it because they'd love it, because you're paying for it, so they'd play it and play it and play it, so I could listen to it and listen to it, so I could learn it. It'd been much simpler if they'd sent us a tape of it.
Lowe did write loads of classic game tunes.
David Lowe was composer on some of my favourite games.
He's very well known on the retro game blogging circles.
I've heard of Dave Lowe's work, as I'm sure most people have. It's littered across retro gaming.
What Dave Lowe was able to do with what he had, the equipment back then, amazing.
He was really good in terms of like iconic music.
His music is unique.
Even if you don't know the name, I think you'll hear it and you'll see the games. You're like, oh my god, yeah, that one, I know that.
Dave Lowe wrote Afterburner, International Karate,
Beneath the Steel Sky,
Hard Driving, and Starglider.
Rasputin, even on the Spectrum, has a really nice, catchy tune to it.
Railway Tycoon. The music was brilliant in all of them.
Things like Frontier Elite.
Very impressive man.
I can't imagine
like with the music not being there.
If you've listened to a lot of Dave Lowe's music in video games, you certainly recognise it as being his style.
I heard that obviously he eventually at some point stopped doing the music for the games.
He was making all these classic tracks for the classic games that everyone loved, and then suddenly stopped nothing. And it's a mystery.
There's been blogs all over the place trying to find him.
I don't really know what happened to David Lowe, but his music back then was really important.
To this day, we never knew what happened until now.
We weren't well off at all. We lived on a council estate and it was pretty rough. And the schools I went to, they were just a nightmare. I mean, it was a matter of survival at school. You just learnt to either fight and keep out the way or get killed, basically. They were a nightmare, those school days. It was a good childhood, although it was a rough area. Home life was still good. I mean, it was only when you went out, you had to wear armour. When I was 12, I wasn't really into music at all. What actually happened was the kid next door, he had an acoustic guitar and he couldn't play it, but he was standing outside with it. And another kid from round the back, where we lived on this council estate, he came along and he said, "Oh, I can play that." And he stood outside my house and he played on this guitar. It just blew my mind. I thought, that's absolutely brilliant. I can remember it really clearly, standing there watching him play this, because he was older, he was about 17 or something, 18. And I badly wanted a guitar. In fact, I wanted that guitar. The kid next door, he took it back in and I went on and on at my mum and dad to buy me this guitar, And then eventually I talked him into it. I remember standing at his gate and he brought it out and it was like in a film, we went, bing, the sun pinged off it. And that was it. I was just hooked completely, and I spent every waking minute with that guitar, learning it, tuning it. I would ride home from school. You get an hour for lunch, and I'd be on my bike and I'd be home in 15 minutes, and I'd spend half hour playing the guitar and then bike back to school. Every evening, didn't go out, just played the guitar, practiced it. I was obsessed, absolutely obsessed with it. I managed to convince them that if I got a paper round, they would sign the hire purchase for an electric guitar, which cost £33. And so for about 2 years, I got up every morning at 5 o'clock, and then I got 21 and 6 a week for doing that. Virtually all that went on doing the HP for the electric guitar.
The velvet cloak of night shrouds the London airport. All is quiet, all is serene. But this is the lull before the storm. Thousands of Beatles fans are bedded down for the night to await the arrival of their heroes. And here they are, fresh from their triumphant appearances in the United States. 12,000 young Britons roar a welcome.
I became Beatles fan when this kid at school called Alan Smith, he lent me their first album. He said, "You take that home and listen to that and I bet you'll be a Beatles fan." And I took it home and I turned it right up full and I laid with my ear next to the speaker, which was only about 4 or 5 inches. And I remember it going 1, 2, 3, 4. And McCartney counts that end, doesn't he? And it starts with "Saw Us Stand There," and that just blew my brain. It was so brilliant. And it was right in my ear and it was deafening loud in my ear. Yeah, then I was a Beatles fan. And by the time I was 15, we were playing 3 nights a week in local pubs, doing The Who and Beatles tracks and stuff, earning really good money, more than my dad, and he was driving a lorry for 5, 6 days a week. My mum really didn't want me to be a musician, and I had massive rows with a big bad scene. I mean, that really culminated in the fact that by the time I was 17, I really left home. I knew I was going to be a musician. I wasn't going to do anything else.
I was at Dance College Arts Ed in London in the Barbican. There was a few of us living in a hostel. My mother thought I'd been safe hands in a hostel run by nuns at the back of Oxford Street. I'd had enough of the West End. I wanted to go elsewhere, explore London a bit more. So I ended up going down the Old Kent Road. My friend Julie sort of said, "Oh wow, there's a band playing," and she said, "Let's go and listen." And I remember walking in. It's like a horseshoe bar. It was packed, absolutely packed. Julie caught the eye of somebody and got talking, and then they asked her to come back the next night. Came back, and then I got introduced to the bass player, and then we just talked, and we just kind of hit it off. He said, "I've just got a really strong feeling. I'm going to know you for an awful long time." He said, "I don't know in what capacity, you know, whether you being a dancer and me being a musician, but I'm telling you, we're going to know each other an awful long time." And I always remember that, because it was just like almost an epiphany he had. And he said, "I hope to see you again."
Me and my brother Jeff, who's also a musician, we put together the Scobie Smith Band. We were working in a pub 6 nights a week. I think I was earning about 80 quid a week for that.
Yesterday I was happy to play.
We went on New Faces because the manager of a place we were working as a band, he knew the producer. It was great to do, and we must have been quite good because we kept winning. I've never seen the New Faces footage. God, we dressed like that. We did.
Really cool silver suit.
That's a cool suit. Same bass guitar. Look. I wrote it when I was about 18. It was one of my first songs I wrote.
He never feels enough or blue. Sad is the song who sings of starry, starry nights. Tells of futures bright for two. Whoa, she doesn't love me no more. I know she's closed the door.
I had the best hair.
She's closed the door. Sad is the songbird who sings of starry, starry night. Oh, tells of future bright for two. She doesn't love me no more. I know she's closed the door. She doesn't love me no more. I know she's closed the door.
Noel Edmonds? Yes, I like them because they've got a touch of class.
And this will leave you there with a touch of class. And to you, David?
Terrific. I mean, the guy sang the song for that girl. He actually did perform. Absolutely wonderful. I was crying.
Lionel
Absolutely great. That's a new record.
Well, it isn't been made into a record
not
yet, I
yet?
don't
Oh,
think.
well,
no.
if it isn't, it should be, because I want to
Oh,
buy
that's
it.
that. There you are. You see, I got wrong information. You know more than I
think
do.
it's
now.
tremendous.
They liked it, did you, audience? Yes. Yes.
Oh, Andy.
The winning act tonight on New Faces. You'll see them again on the 31st of July. Scobie Smith.
I'd like to go back and do the New Faces performances again because, you know, I had really good hair then. And, and now I can't fit in that silver suit. But I don't think I could go back to doing 6 nights a week gigging. They were long nights. We used to work from 8 till 2 in the morning, and you get a few breaks in there, but they were long nights. But you know, that's how you learn.
Now, Timex brings the power of the computer within reach of more people than ever before. Introducing the Timex Sinclair 1000, the first of a new generation of computers designed to be easier to use and to own. For $99.95, power to learn at the speed of light, power to organize with unfailing accuracy. The Timex Sinclair 1000, power is within your reach.
Vicky, my wife, used to moan completely about the fact that I'd come home from gigs and I'd be so restless till I go to the gig in the evening. She said, can't you get a hobby? You know, you need to relax, get a hobby. So I bought a load of electronics stuff and I was making electronics things. I was doing that when an advert came on the telly for the ZX81 and one of the lines said, eggs equals 12, you know. Line 10 or something, when eggs equals 12, and that just, I thought, what does that mean? That's insane. Obviously it was part of basic programming, you know, eggs was a variable. It fascinated me enough, it was that line that pulled me into having to buy a ZX81, and so learned to program in BASIC.
When Peter was small, he played with these. They were a toy. And then he discovered they were helping him to learn to read. So it is with microcomputers and the revolution in information technology. It's begun with play, Space Invaders at the pub, and with circuits and chips on the kitchen table.
After a couple of weeks, I started looking at learning machine code.
The hobbyists are the forerunners of the microprocessor revolution, the nutcase micro-geniuses who have to do their thing, and never mind the dinner getting cold.
You don't use BASIC, you go straight to the chip.
People like David Woodfield and his friend, Thumper.
Poke the numbers into memory and it would run thousands of times faster.
What is it?
And that's how I learned to program, basically. My brother-in-law, Paul, I convinced him that with machine code we could earn some money out of writing some games. I was still gigging every night, but I was really fascinated by computers and the logic of the programming. So we wrote a game called Buggy Blast and we sold it to BT's software division called Firebird. And that was on the Spectrum and it didn't have a sound chip of any description, so that's why there's no music. There's just sound effects. That went out and it did well and they gave us a big advance for it. We earned quite a lot of money off that. Enough for me to stop gigging if I wanted to. Paul went on to do another game called Rasputin. He then came to me and said, would I do all the music for Rasputin? I think I had 2 weeks to do it in. He needed about 15 pieces of music for the different levels. I wrote a few pieces quickly. But basically I just dragged out a catalogue of songs that I'd written over the years and played them instrumentally. My brother and I, Jeff, we had a band called Repro. Those songs, a lot of them ended up as instrumentals in Rasputin and other titles as well.
At the time, because the sample memory was so limited, what composers had to do was write their own technology and their own drivers, and inevitably they wrote them in machine code, which you had to be a pretty damn good coder to do that.
Dave coded and wrote his own assembled code for his tunes. You can't say, for example, you have a piece of Dave Lowe's music in its original Amiga format. You couldn't go and play it on an Amiga straight unless you had the right code, because he programmed all of that himself.
Unless you could write in machine code, it wasn't possible. So you had to be a machine code programmer and a musician to be able to do the job in those days. There wasn't proprietary software that would allow you to stick a load of samples in and it would play them. You had to be a machine code programmer and write your own software in machine code and it would basically play the music. All the computers in those days were very memory limited compared to modern machines. The game and the graphics always had the priority on how much RAM was available, and so you'd always end up with the smallest amount of memory that the programmer could spare to give you to fit the music in. You'd argue backwards and forwards with him a bit. No, can't you give me 6K? And he'd go, no, you can have 5. And you'd go, okay. And you'd end up having to fit it in. To put that in perspective, the Twitter app on my phone uses roughly 100 meg. So that's about 20,000 times more space than I had available. That was the challenge, really, to get it to work on the limited resource that the machine had. It was all groundbreaking stuff, really, that you just fought with again and again and again until you got it to work. Once you got it working, you'd jump about.
It was fantastic to be, in a place in computer games where there was a lot of innovation happening, both on the hardware and on the software.
We were there at the beginning, and we helped form the medium. And because of the subtlety of the music, because of the subtlety of the graphics, because of the game design that had to be absolutely focused, we collectively drove video games in a certain direction.
No one had got samples coming out of an Atari before, because the sound chip wasn't designed to do samples. It was designed to play beeps, and you could make the beeps different noises. But I opened up my Atari, and with a voltmeter, I was on the audio pins of the sound chip, and I was playing different values from the software and seeing what voltage came out, and then writing a map of every possible tone I could make and every possible corresponding voltage. And then when you drew that on a graph, you could actually effectively do a digital to analog conversion, a DAC as they're now called. And so through software, by manipulating the volume control on the 3 sound channels, you could make it play an analog waveform.
The Atari ST doesn't have a sampling chip like the Amiga does, but it has a speaker that responds to 16 values of volume. At 0, the speaker does nothing, and at 15, it moves forward as far as it can. So you sample somebody singing, and then you convert that down to a 4-bit sample, and that gives you 16 values. And when you push those values to the volume control of the speaker at the right speed, the speaker cone moves backwards and forwards, corresponding to the original waveform that you produced when you spoke on the mic. And so it produces the sample.
I had just got this to work. As far as I know, I'm the first person to do it. And then I needed for the first time ever, we needed some real music with real vocals, which no one had ever done in a computer game before, because computer game music was always bleeps and pings and things. And so we had the first sampled sound and the first real song or mini song that any computer game had ever had.
We could only get 15 seconds worth of music into the actual machine because of the memory limitations.
I think I gave him full artistic license and just knew we had samples for the first time ever. It had to be something you couldn't play without samples, so it had to be vocals, it had to be a richer sound than you would normally do in computer music, but it also had to be short and sweet. It had to be, very jingly. So he came up with the goods.
I first worked with Dave back in 1988 on a game which I believe was Afterburner, which was a Sega arcade that we converted.
So on Afterburner, what I did was use that technique and then write a piece of music that was 15 seconds long. It was written musically, so I could grab sections out, going right down to, hemi-demi, semi-quavers or whatever. And the computer knew all the values of them, so I'd write a string of data that it would grab sections from that piece of music and throw them at the chip. I think I did about 6.5 minutes before it repeated. I'd have a little guitar riff and I could grab some vocals out and I could put them all in different orders. That had never been done before. It was done in real time, so as it ran, the computer was grabbing the bits out of the one 15-second piece. Today it's much more sophisticated, but the concept is the same in dance music and pop music. I wasn't very keen on the original piece of music that came from the arcade machine. So I just took the standard rising and falling chord sequence and just did my own thing with it.
Had they known that Dave listened to the music, didn't like it, and wrote something else, they would have gone absolutely crazy. But they never found out, nor were they ever going to find out. So, now, of course, you'd have the Japanese representatives in the UK checking it. It was a different time. It was a very different time.
Activision liked the music I did so much, and they gave me the award for it.
Dave's music, as well as a couple of others like Raphael Stowe and Olaf Gustafsson, are amongst the more unique of styles in the game. You instantly recognise it's one of those types of games that they've worked on. I think primarily because they didn't just use the standard sound fonts that you could get for the Amiga or the ST, they actually digitised and used their own work and gave it their own rubber stamp on it, if that makes sense.
What was interesting was that different composers, and there were about 3 or 4 really well-known composers, of which Dave was one of the top, they wrote their own technology and their own drivers and used that then to create the music. But what was interesting was that then you could listen to a piece of music and you would know who that composer was because of the way that it sounded, because of the way that the technology was driving the creative aspect of writing music. So, those 3 or 4 people became really famous in their own right, which is one of the reasons why, Dave's work is now revered in a way that I think surprises him.
The music that Dave wrote that I know is the music from Elite. It was the very first Atari. He had a block that he pushed into the top of it to make it work. And then I got a Commodore 64, which I played Elite on. I probably should have been out and about doing other stuff, but I wasn't. I was absolutely besotted with this game. The second I played that particular game, that was me done. That was just the escapism of it. I had a whole new universe to play with. I could fly spaceships. I don't even want to think about how many hours I devoted to playing that.
When I was doing Frontier Elite, all the music in the game was classical music. Ride of the Valkyries, Blue Danube. I knew I had to write pieces that would kind of sit with that. So that was a massive challenge, really, because they're fantastic pieces of music. That's what I like. It was the challenge of it. It was what pulled me along all the time.
If you take the music and you don't know the game, it still works as a standalone piece. But if you take the music and you know the game, you can hear the game in the music. You'll hear the drama, and then you'll hear it calm down, and you'll hear the different themes that Dave's been able to evoke within it. If it didn't exist within the game, I am sure that I would have still loved the game. But the game wouldn't have been as full or as colourful. It wouldn't have had the same depth to it, I think.
The main thing that it did for us as a family was it enabled me to move out of London, because I had to live in London to be a professional musician working 6-7 nights a week. I was suffering exhaustion from playing, so we moved up to Yorkshire. She totally supported me. She helped me dig out the studio. She helped me set the equipment up. She even wrote one of the pieces once when I was really stressed over, and we had about half a dozen games on the go and the deadlines were in on the end of the week, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning and I still hadn't finished, and I said to her, "Can you write a piece?" And she went to the piano with her limited piano playing skills and knocked out this tune with one finger, and we used it.
Oh, that's so embarrassing.
And of course she was the green head in the Cybermorph game.
Cybermore. Yeah, I remember that one. That was an interesting game.
And I'm just trying to remember what it was I said. Oh, it's the, where did you learn to fly?
Where did you learn
that voice just never stops.
Where did you learn to
Shut up.
Oh my god, every single time you smash into a wall, she says it. And then, because when you respawn, you're like literally in front of whatever just killed you. It's just like constant, where did you learn to fly?
Stop!
Where did you learn to fly?
Oh shit, oh shit! Where'd you learn to be an asshole?
I absolutely hate my voice.
Jaguar, I've had all I can take.
So, yeah, I'm with them. It's fine.
She did do the voice for that, and she did the voice on Just Another Mission on Carrier Command. I set up a studio here, and I had all the machines in it, the ST, the Amiga, the Spectrum, the Commodore 64. Wherever there was, we had one or several of them, and I would get the commissions off of Rainbird and Firebird. You know, I'd enjoy writing the music. I'd use a piano or guitar or something to write a piece of music, so I was still writing what I considered good music. The compromise was putting it on the machines, that there were such technical limitations on the machines, but it was still a challenge to make it as good as you could. Started getting calls from Activision, Electronic Arts, did loads of work for them. I ended up doing over 70 games in the end, over about a 10-year period.
I am Rasputin. Baby.
I stopped doing it because towards the end of the 90s, everything went in-house. They wanted the musicians, the graphic artists, the programmers, developers, you know, all to work in-house. It went the way of everything else. The companies who were paying for it, they wanted to make sure they could see what everybody was doing from 9 to 5 every day. So they wanted you to work in-house so they could check that you'd done this, you had a schedule to do this and this. That didn't really suit me. I mean, I'd always been a musician who worked in studio as I did. I couldn't work in there 9 to 5. You can't sit in a studio and write music to order. I can't anyway. It wasn't for me. Eventually the technology moved on to the point where you didn't need to be a programmer. Anybody could knock together a load of samples, stick them on a CD, and the game would run them, which it couldn't do in the days I was doing it. You didn't have to be a composer, you just stuck samples together. And really the challenge went out of it. It became boring. I've got to have a challenge in it. Otherwise it's just a job, innit? Might as well go to the factory and pull handles. Now it's really good. For a musician, it's got really interesting again.
There are two types of people in the video games industry. Those that left for whatever reason and those that stayed.
I don't feel like he gave up making music, but he stopped doing the computer game music.
Had he gone into one of the publishers, he would have worked 9 to 5. He would have basically lost all his inspiration. And I hate to say it, but I think he's a lot better having done what he did.
But nowadays, it's a shame because nowadays, like, the technology is completely, like, unlimited. So he could have been having, like, these pieces that he's written in the ways that he'd imagined, and, you know, it wouldn't have been compromised by, like, chiptune. So in that respect, yeah, I think it's kind of a shame.
I drive trains for a living. I hope to get through the rest of my career without having further tragedies. 4 incidents in 16 years. It's not good. One of the things that you're actually recommended to do is to pick things that can take you somewhere. And they can be pictures, they can be music, they can be a whole host of things. Any piece of music which gives you that hook to an instant escape is a go-to place. Dave's piece for Elite is my go-to place.
You can't imagine it like a film, like you write for a film, because obviously they'd use real music. They didn't have the problem of putting it into a computer chip. They could use a recording studio and actual musicians to make that music as exciting or sad or whatever they wanted. And when I wrote the pieces, that's how I imagined them sounding and being done.
In my mind, it creates so many images. I think there's a simplicity and a purity to these older games. The sound was very limited by the technology, but your brain managed to fill in the colour and then make it so much more.
I suppose it's a bit like John Williams, or like you might get on Star Trek, Star Wars. That's how I imagined it, that type of theme.
The power of music to move you is huge. To be taken straight back to, in effect, the room I was playing the game in 25 years ago, is an incredibly powerful thing. It gives you a hook that enables you to then use that journey, to take that journey, without having to look for exterior connections. And you can put the rubbish away and just go back and enjoy that moment.
I get letters from people, and they often start, I'm sure no one will read this, and they talk about how important, when they were young, these games were to them, and the relationship. And one young man talked about the way that it defined the relationship with his grandmother, who's passed away, much earlier, but to him it was really important. He remembered playing this game with her, running back from school. Another, terribly sad story about a man who, his brother, they loved each other, and they were at school together, and they used to quote quotes from Broken Sword, and then tragically the brother died. So again, the relationship that this man had with his brother was defined by the video game. And looking back, I am very proud of the fact that Dave and I were in many ways pioneers. We were pioneering this extraordinary medium that came from computers with very little memory and very little processing power. And we were pushing them as far as we could. And one of the things that I'm sure that Dave would be very proud of, if not, he certainly should be, and I'm very proud of, is how many people come back and say how it's profoundly affected their lives.
whenever I wish for anything, if ever, when people say, oh, what would you wish for, and everything, in my heart, it's like for him to have success, to have that recognition. He's been nearly there, and somehow it's just within reach of making it, but somehow something happens, or it's just, I don't know what it is.
I'd come out of it doing the music and I'd never thought about it really. To me, it'd come and gone, something I'd moved off from. Till Holly, younger daughter, she said, Dad, you're all over the internet with your music.
So I just remember my brother Adam, he just sent me a text out of the blue saying, did you know Dad's famous on the internet? And I was like, no. He'd gone on and he just found like forums of people talking about Dad and his music for the computer games and stuff. He left them messages saying, oh, I'm Adam Lowe, I'm Dave's son, and I grew up with all this music literally in my bedroom and stuff. They were like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was mental. And so we were like, Jesus, you're famous on the internet.
And I thought, this is crazy. And I started looking into it and I was completely unaware of that retro scene and how big it was and how important it was to those people who played those games in those days. I couldn't believe that that music was still regarded highly by those people. I was basically just a working musician. I didn't expect my name to be on the internet. Suddenly there was this whole world of people playing this stuff and talking about these games and the music. If it hadn't been for Adam finding that and telling Holly and Holly getting on to me, nothing would have happened. I'd still be completely in the dark.
I knew he was proud of those tracks, but I know it always bugged him because he told me that the way the computer chips make him sound, it's just not what he intended, you know? He wrote big pieces and it was kind of like this light bulb thing of, well, why don't we remake them? Why don't we remake them as the big pieces that they are?
So we have Dave Lowe, who is in England, I believe, and his daughter, Holly Jaslow, who is in the Mediterranean on an island. Let's welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. It's not like when I hear those tunes, I'm like, oh, it reminds me of my childhood. It's just kind of like I've grown up with it and listened to it all my life, really. So, and then I've been working hard on them in the last year.
Dave Lowe is one of the most prolific game musicians in the history of the world. And currently, you're working on making an album of this, remastered with actual musicians and stuff like that.
That's right, yeah.
I think Dad would probably say himself that he wouldn't particularly want to take this task on his own. It's quite a lot of work to it, and it's just more fun collaborating as well. It can get really boring working on your own. It would be really nice to have this album as sort of showcase of, well, hey, you know, if these were the games they were today, this was what they'd sound like.
When you compose for these machines, I imagine it can be kind of frustrating trying to translate the way that you hear music and the way that you want to do it into what a computer can do.
It's quite limiting, yeah. When you've written a classical piece or something, quite hard to put it over on a 3 or 4 channel chip. Even if it is samples, you're still limited by memory.
I don't feel like a baton has been passed. Maybe we're in like a 3-legged race together or something now.
I would like to thank Dave and Holly Lowe for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. Again, check out their Kickstarter for a campaign for Uncle Art, A Temporal Shift, and become a backer if you haven't done that already.
I mean, I find it brilliant, the fact that, you know, people have put money up to get us to remake a lot of those tracks.
Since I was like 16, working professionally and signed with record companies and stuff, he was always producing the albums I was making, and then we started co-producing together, so we've worked together all the time.
I don't see her as my daughter, really, no. I just see her as a really good musician. She's a really good composer as well. It is a real professional working relationship, even though she's my daughter, yeah.
It's kind of weird, like in a way, I forget that he's my dad. It's just like, he's just part of me. Again, it's sort of like, I've grown up with him and I've worked with him my whole life. And now we're working on this together. And it's just so cool because he was the composer of it. And I know those tunes as little beepy chip tunes, even though I knew what they were supposed to sound like. And now it does sound like what it's supposed to sound like. Is there any chance we can do one with the glockenspiel and one without the glockenspiel?
Yeah, sure.
She has the same thing about it that I do, that it doesn't matter how you get to where you get. We just want it right. You know, when I'm working with her, I can say to her, Holly, that's just rubbish. And she can say that to me, Dad, that's crap, you can't do that. And, you know, that sounds awful. And we go, yeah, okay. There's no ego there.
Through so much, I don't even think you can hear it, because it's such a high...
Dave was kind of legendary in the office. It was if a project was really important, then Dave was the one that he went to. Now, of course, I'm sure that he didn't realise, sitting in Scarborough, that actually there was this sort of level of respect, particularly since he never actually met any of us. But Dave was very much the, you know, he was the most important person. If we could get him, we did. I founded Revolution in 1990, and our second game was a game called Beneath the Steel Sky, which we wrote with a comic book artist called Dave Gibbons. And that was really trying to pull together the best of the best. And I went back and remembered that I'd worked with Dave and asked him to write the music for the intro. He did a great job. Dave Gibbons created a comic, and Beneath the Steel Sky has really gone on to be quite a cult classic.
I never actually met Charles in person, although I've spoken to him on the phone loads. I really hope he likes the new version of Beneath the Steel Sky we've done.
Who wrote the story with Dave Gibbons. And we'd written the middle, and we were kind of working out what happened at the beginning and at the end. I don't know how well you know the story, but basically it turns out that at the end you encounter a man that's connected himself to the computer, and they've basically corrupted each other. But somebody says, it's his dad. Oh my God, it is, it's his dad. In that moment, it's his dad. Your brain goes back and you go, but if it's his dad, then his dad sent the helicopter, he stopped the helicopter. And it's one of those incredibly serendipitous moments where everything falls into place. Based on that, Dave Gibbons went and drew the comic book, and that worked really well. I think fans of Beneath the Steel Sky are going to be so excited when they hear this music.
With Frontier Elite 2, it's the piece of music that's always stuck in my mind. I've always wondered what it would sound like with a real orchestra. You can use samples, but there's no comparison between even the best samples and a real orchestra.
We chose to record here at Abbey Road because there's like 3 studios where they sort of do orchestral recordings that sound really good, and Abbey Road is one of the best recording studios in the world.
I want to go to Abbey Road because it's Abbey Road. You know, I've been to all the other studios, we've used them. Technically, they're the same as Abbey Road. They have all the same equipment and all the rest of it, but that's Abbey Road. That's where the Beatles made all that stuff, and that's where everybody else went, because it's Abbey Road.
I'm definitely excited to be here myself as a musician and a fan of music through history. You know, like, of course I'm excited to be here. It's kind of weird, actually, isn't it?
So we're going to Abbey Road 2, which is where the Beatles made virtually everything they ever did.
Hello.
Tom, how you doing?
Good to see you, man.
And you.
Excellent.
Tom and Owain are the arrangers of the orchestral score. They've done some amazing stuff, and I'm really looking forward to working with them.
Look at the scores, though.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
check it out.
If we spilt something on them,
Well
we
done.
have to reprint everything.
Just a quick trip back to Wales, isn't it?
It is. Lots of sellotape would be required.
The Frontier main theme, if you listen to it, there's a trumpet-esque sound which carries the melody for the majority, and it goes up so high. You know, it's not playable by an instrument in the real world. Obviously, in the synth world, it can do whatever you want, which is kind of the fun.
There's some things that the computers did you can't emulate with musicians. You know, the way it would handle very, very fast stuff that a musician couldn't actually play. You could do it on a computer because you're writing in semi-quavers, you know. And it could pitch bend stuff around that musicians you can't do with a real instrument.
Turning it into a real thing it turns it into a bit more of a challenge. So you've got to say, okay, the trumpet is going to go up to here, and then what instruments can we use to bring it up to this next level to carry on the idea as it was originally intended without distracting too much in terms of the colour change and things like that. So there were some of the challenges we had in it. I think the reason this piece translates so well into a live orchestral piece is because it's probably, you can tell in the way it's been written originally, it's been composed in a way that works for an orchestra normally. It feels like a march. It's like a sort of an Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark type thing. There's a lot of energy behind it, and that still comes through on the Atari version. Because it works well on 4 tracks on a 4-bit Atari system that's really dated and stuff nowadays and still works. When you put it on an orchestra, you know it's going to come to life, and these musicians are going to breathe life into it, and you know it's a really exciting process.
That's the spine-tingling thing as well. When that happens, you know that you've done your work to the highest possible standard. And here, in the world's best studio with world's best musicians.
The musicians are world class. It's a world class studio. It's got to go right.
It's like for you at the moment.
A couple of quick words before we start. Today we're recording an interesting project
with the composer Dave Lowe, who's going to give us a quick wave. There it is, there we go. And I think Holly is going to say something about the project, which is, because it's been quite a journey to get here. We will have an A in the cans, but first, Holly, perhaps say something about the project, thanks.
If anyone had an Amiga or an Atari and used to play the Elite games, this is the... Yes? Okay. This is the theme from Frontier Elite 2, so you might recognise it. We're really excited. This has been a really long process to get here and to get all the funding and everything, and so this is brand new for us to work with an orchestra, so we're really excited to have you guys and to be in Abbey Road and for it all to be filmed and stuff, so yeah, we're going to enjoy it. Thank you.
Everything in the first hours build up to that first play, you know. That's the best bit.
That piece of music that was in that game has stuck. And I really want to hear what it should have been. Oh, it's dragged me straight back to the room in which I was playing it. It's a gift if you can do that, if you can write that kind of music. I mean, that's time travel.
What's it like to have written a tune in your head and then go into Abbey Road Studios with a 50-piece orchestra 30 odd years later and have them play it how you originally heard it? Can you describe how that feels?
Yes, it's just... I don't know what the feeling is really. It's just... No, I can't. Actually, I can't. Apart from, you know, yeah, it's brilliant. What else can I say? It's just brilliant. Interestingly enough, it was my grandma, when my mum was really, really going on at me about it, and she'd really hassle me every day, you know, have you got a job, have you been looking in the paper and get a job? And I said, Mum, I'm going to be a musician, you know, that's what I'm doing it already, I'm not doing anything else. One day my grandma, my nan, pulled me aside and she said, look, you do what you want to do with your life. Don't do what your mum or your dad want to do, you do what you want to do. And kind of having that support was quite important. Funnily enough, I remember we were coming back from a holiday in my granddad's car. We're all, you know, little kids crammed in the back seat, and to keep us quiet, because we were all bored out of our brains, they're going round and they're going to us, oh, what do you want to do when you grow up? When they got to me, just totally out of my mouth came words, I want to be a singer. And I had no intention of ever being a singer or anything to do with it at all at that age. And I remember saying that quite clearly, really weirdly, and then thinking, why did I say that? Maybe all fate is set. Don't know. Every event is the unavoidable consequence of the preceding one. So you can't do anything else than what you do. And every choice and decision you think you make, you have to make. You can't make it any other way because of what went on before.